Hello again. I just wanted to update and add some things to my penny pinchers list by request. I had a follower who asked me to expand on some of my penny pinching tips that were less specific than the Dollar Tree stuff. So this is what I'm going to do tonight. Um, I have a list that I might be referring to. So if I keep looking down, that's why. So, some of the things that I was discussing with my this friend who follows my channel. Um, oh, by the way, I'm not wearing my rainbow hat tonight because I'm wearing my rainbow muumuu, one of my favorites. Um, but some of the things that I wanted to address. When my daughters were little, I was a single parent for quite some time, and so I developed some little tips and tricks and ways to repurpose some things. And some of this is going to be on, some of these things will be on my list. So, first thing is to anybody who has little girls or to ladies that wear pantyhose and tights, here's an idea, especially if you go through a lot of hair ties. I was talking about how my Easter eggs hold my hair ties, but I also use other containers and things like Ziploc bags and sometimes mesh bags. But anyway, what I used to do is when my little girls would wear out their tights, like if they got stained or like a rip in the knee, rip in the toe, because my daughters, although they were beautiful and girly sometimes, they were also tomboys sometimes, so they were kind of rough on their clothes. Anyway, one of the things I used to do is I would take their tights or pantyhose when they outgrew them or wore them out or they got damaged, and I would cut across the leg, which I wish I'd grabbed something to use as a demonstration, but anyway, but I would cut across the leg into small strips, and then once you have cut all those strips, you stretch them out a little bit, and those can be used as hair ties. Um, they really came in handy, especially since my younger daughter, by the time she was 4 years old, had hair past her knees, and it was curly. And I would often keep her hair in a braid or a couple of braids or um, things like that to keep it from tangling up a lot. Anyway, another thing you can do with these little ties or any regular rubber hair ties that are like the rubber band type. I personally don't use the most of the rubber band types because they will cut your hair. I prefer the the little furry velour type. I can't think of the right uh word right now. I'm old. I get brain bubbles. Anyway, you I found a trick to where, just say you have a favorite skirt, pair of pants, or whatever, and you go to wear it and you realize that it shrunk a little bit while it was in the drawer or the closet. Well, here's a nifty little trick. If you're wearing a blouse that goes over the waistband, you take one of the hair ties, loop it through the buttonhole, then you loop it under through itself and pull, and that makes like a loop, which you can then put around the button of the waistband, and it gives you a little more stretch. And that's come in handy many times for me because my size goes up and down a lot because I go through stages where I'll gain and lose a little bit of weight here and there, and that way I don't have to alter things or get rid of them just because I put on just a little bit of weight. So some other things that I've done is, if you're handy and you like to make your own clothes and things like that, here's a really simple thing to do. If you have a piece of fabric, or you have some fabric around the house that you like, when you or your hubby have that pair of undies that really needs to go, because the fabric is worn out or it's stained or torn or whatever. But if the waistband is still good, then you cut off the waistband of the boxer briefs or ladies' undies or whatever, if it's a regular waistband, and you can use those as the base or the waistband for a skirt. And all you really need to do is get a piece of fabric that's long enough to suit you and big enough to go around you. All you really need to do, I like mine fuller, but if you like straighter skirts, you can just sew the top of the fabric around the waistband, and usually you only have to put one seam down the side if you've cut it properly to fit. And sometimes you can like gather it up just a little bit if you, like I said, want a little bit of a fuller skirt. And if you're interested in knowing how to do this and some other things like that, how to repurpose and recycle clothes that way, let me know and I can go into more detail for you on that. But I've done this several times, made my own skirts or repaired my own skirts that, or slips for that matter, that have gotten worn out, and the waistband has stretched out, but it's fine otherwise. This is a good way to repurpose it. Another thing I have done in the past is taken an old t-shirt, cut the top off of the where the arms and neck are, and used the rest of that t-shirt as a slip by doing the same thing, by adding a waistband. Anyway, oh, something else. Just say you have a blouse or top that you really love, and or even a dress, a simple dress that you really love, but it's gotten stained or ripped, or it's not repairable, or you've outgrown it. You can take that piece of clothing and separate the seams and use it as a pattern to make another item just like it. This works for most of the simpler things like tank tops and pullover shirts and some button-down shirts and things like that. I don't do buttonholes. I sew by hand. I don't know how to use a sewing machine, so buttonholes are not a good thing for me. But if it's most other things, or if I use Velcro as a closing, sorry, then this is something simple. But you just take, and when you dissect or separate the shirt, or I will just say shirt, and you pin it onto the other fabric and trace it on, use it like a regular clothing pattern. And if you've gained a little weight or lost a little weight, you can adjust accordingly and just pin it onto the fabric, cut around it, sew it up, you're good. Okay. Trying to think something that's still in the realm of clothing. I'll just go down the list. I'm sorry. Okay. One of the things I used to do with my kids as a home project, and it's cheap and simple, is if you have skewers, if you have barbecue skewers, these will work. If not, you can buy the wooden shish kebab skewers in stores. Most grocery stores carry them. A lot of discount stores will carry them. But you take a regular potato, same kind you would eat. I don't know if this works with sweet potatoes because I haven't tried them, but this is a regular white potato. You peel it and cut it into different shapes, and sometimes it helps to slice them into thick slices first. And depending on what type of beads you want to make, because these are going to be potato beads. But depending on the design and thickness and everything else, you cut accordingly. Some people will use these to make other projects and use cookie cutters. It takes a little more effort, but it can be done. But you take the beads or the potato beads and you put them on the skewers if you want a hole for stringing, like to make necklaces and little things out of. You put them on the skewers, and sometimes they're going to break, and you just have to do another one, but you're not wasting a lot of money by doing that. So, but sometimes you have to cut them a little bit thick to get this done. And once you've got them on the skewers, you take a Ziploc bag and you put, or some type of bag, and put the skewers in there, and then cover it by pouring kitty litter into the bag. And once you've got that, now you don't necessarily have to have an enclosed Ziploc bag. Some people will use a box. I've used all different kinds of containers, so whatever works for you. But it takes a couple of weeks sometimes, or up to a couple of weeks sometimes, but you can check it every now and then and see. But once those potato pieces have dried, they'll be like wood. So you have the equivalent of wooden beads that you can paint, use poster paints or watercolors or whatever, and you can then paint the beads and string them and use them as accents, or make your own little jewelry, using string. But there's lots of things you can do with these potato beads. But that's just one of the projects I used to do with my kids when they were little. Egg cartons. A lot of people save egg cartons for Easter. I used to save egg cartons for a lot of things, but I don't save them so much anymore because I don't have enough space to do everything I want to do. But one of the things is that used egg cartons are good for is to start seedlings. If you're using seeds to start plants, that's a good the tray. It makes a good tray for starting seedlings. Some people also like to take the tops of carrots and put them in a saucer with just a little bit of water, and grow them until they sprout, and then replant them outside in a garden or whatever. And the same thing with potato eyes. If your potatoes have the little root eyes on them, you cut a piece of that, and some people dry them first. I never did. You can take those potato eyes and use those to grow other potatoes. And if you have a dark, cool closet that you've kept potatoes in, or even if you keep them in a refrigerator drawer like I do, sometimes if they're in there long enough, they will start growing roots on them. And those are okay. Those are fine to use to replant as well. My younger daughter also replants parts of lettuce and cabbage, but I'm not sure of the way she does that. Another project I used to do with my kids is to take a sweet potato, and you can do this with a regular potato, but I've always used sweet potatoes. And you get a jar, and I used to use pickle jars or relish jars and some toothpicks, and you put one end of the potato into the jar and fill it part of the way with water and sit it on a windowsill. And within a few weeks, usually, you start getting roots and leaves. And in some cases, some people have told me that they've gotten to the point where they have flower buds, or, I don't know if that was for sure with potatoes, but I know that some people say that, you know, they at least they get nice leaves and everything. And even if you don't replant it, it's a nice little project to teach your kids, and it's a pretty plant. So that's another project we used to do. Something else I like to do I used to like to do every now and then, and it's not expensive. If you have a glue gun and you can take fake flowers, whether it's some you already have or you buy some cheap ones, and you can decorate headbands and bracelets and um, summer sandals. Like I said, we call them flip flops, and you can either decorate them to match a certain outfit or for a special occasion or something. But one thing I found, if you want to change it up every now and then, instead of using the glue gun on this directly on the headband or sandal or whatever it is you're decorating, some people um, do this with little tote bags and purses too, and decorate them. But sometimes I would either string the flowers or decorations or glue them onto pipe cleaners, which you can wrap around whatever you're decorating, and then change them out if you want to change the color, the design, etc., etc. That's something simple and easy for little girls to do. And some little girls like to decorate their own things and change it out. And this is a way to do it that's not expensive. You can buy the shoe clips and things like that to do it also, but this is something I used to do with my girls. Um, Homemade Febreze. Um, this recipe came from another YouTube creator, and I apologize because I cannot remember her name right now for the world. But if I remember, I will give her credit below, because she has a lot of good tips and tricks also. But what she does is she'll either take a regular spray bottle, or if she has had Febreze and has run out, she'll take, I think it's a cup of vinegar, about a quarter cup or less, or a little bit more of water, and a few drops of fabric softener or scented laundry detergent. And you shake it up, and you can spray it around, and it will freshen your outerwear, like sweaters and jackets, or your furniture, like cloth covered sofas and chairs and things, just whatever you would use Febreze for, this can be used for. But you make it for pennies on the dollar. And if you're like me, it's something you have. I use a lot of vinegar and baking soda and things like that to clean and freshen in my house when I clean. I'm not the greatest in the world at cleaning, but this is something I use sometimes, and she swears by it. And like I said, pennies on the dollar, and it's handy. Another way to repurpose some clothes is, where I live, we get a lot of mineral stains um, in our laundry, unless you use filtered water, which we don't. But sometimes we'll get white clothes that will get kind of gray and dingy, or get oily spots on them, and no amount of bleaching completely takes it away. Or sometimes, like in my husband's case, some of his cotton t-shirts I've washed will turn yellowish. Well, one of the things I've done before is you can take that t-shirt or piece of clothing and soak it in a tea bath. Now, the way I do a tea bath is I probably use like a 4-quart pot and probably about 10 to 12 tea bags. Just regular cheap, $1 a box if you can find them. I wouldn't use, your breakfast teas or your flavored teas or anything like that. Just regular cheap tea bags. You can use them to basically stain the clothing from dull white or yellow to tan. or khaki colored, basically. In some cases, I've done something similar to tie-dye, where I take the rubber bands and twist up the cloth and then rubber band it and make designs on them like you would tie-dye. And this is also something you can do if you have kids in school and they do things like the school plays, or they do the projects where they're, somebody dresses as a Native American and they want t-shirts so they can like fringe them up and dye them and things like that. This is something you can do yourself. And also something you can do with a tea bath. If you have darker hair, or even if you have lighter hair, but you want to put a darker rinse on your hair, this tea bath is good also. Now, what I would recommend is that you let it steep several hours before you use it. And of course, make sure it's cooled off before you use it for dyeing, or, well, if you use it for dyeing, it doesn't have to be extremely cool, but to handle it, I recommend you cool it down. And if you use it for your hair, at least let it cool down to room temperature to avoid burns and things. I haven't personally done this, but a friend of mine says that she's done it several times when she wants to just change the tone. It's not going to dye your hair extremely dark or anything like that, but it adds a different luster to your hair. Speaking of which, if you have very dry hair, one of the tricks that I've seen people do is to take olive oil or mayonnaise. I don't know if it works with the quote-unquote salad dressing like Miracle Whip. It may not. I don't know. I don't use that, so. But you can apply it to your freshly washed hair, or it doesn't really have to be freshly washed, but apply it to your hair and either put on a shower cap, like a plastic shower cap, or wrap your head in plastic. Some people will use a towel or cloth, but I usually do plastic or a shower cap, and let it sit several hours, or if you can, and then wash it completely. And a lot of times this will give your hair extra softness and shine. And I would avoid conditioning for a day or two if you wash your hair every day to maintain that. For parents, this also works for lice infestations. I heard that the oil is more effective than the mayonnaise, but it's not, either way, it's not going to hurt. It's probably less expensive too. You can use vegetable oil, olive oil, or whatever, but it will condition the hair, but it will also smother the lice. And anybody who has had kids in the public school system, or even in the private school system, if your kid is around other kids, there's always the possibility that they can pick up lice. And this is a way to get rid of them without using chemicals and pesticides and harmful things that can make them sick if you have to do it more than once, because oftentimes there's repeat infestations during the school year. Another thing I like to use for freshening around the house, if you have food that goes bad, or something gets burnt and it leaves the smell in your house, or you've cooked something that's strong scented like fish and it's left a fishy smell in the air and everything, you can take a pot. You can take some people say that they use oil warmers and things like this for it, but I usually just do a pot, and I don't think oil warmers, potpourri pots is what they call it. But I'll take a small pot, fill it with water and cinnamon, and bring it to a boil. Now, some people will, instead of using cinnamon, will use lemon juice. But a lot of times I prefer to use cinnamon, but I will also tell you, and this is going to help get rid of either, whether it's, garbage that didn't get taken out or whatever. This will help get that scent out of your kitchen and your home. The lemon juice, you can take something as small as a coffee cup, fill it 2/3 full of water and 1/3 full of lemon juice or vinegar. Put it in your microwave for about 5 minutes and then let it cool. And that will loosen up any oil and grease that's clinging to those hard to reach places, so you don't have to scrub the inside of your microwave. It'll loosen up any splattered food, things like that. And usually you can just wipe it down. But that, again, pennies on the dollar. You can buy products that are made especially for that, but this works as well as anything I've bought for that particular use. I also use vinegar and baking soda to clean my drains. I almost always use either a mix, like a paste of baking soda and water, sometimes a little bit of vinegar in there, to clean my bathtub, to clean my refrigerator, to clean stains on the floor, the countertops. Now, baking soda is a little bit abrasive. It's like using a cleanser, but it has no chemicals. It's natural. So those people who have sensitivities to cleaning products, this might be a good answer for you. Now, there are all natural cleaning products that you can buy, but this is something I have on hand anyway, and it works for me. Also, sometimes the baking soda can be used to get stains off of clothing or shoes and things like that. For food stains, I will use a little bit of Dawn and pre-treat it, and then put a little baking soda on it after I let it sit for an hour or so. Put a little bit of baking soda on it, rub it really well, and then put it in the wash with your regular wash. It's not going to stain or hurt anything else in your laundry. Let me see. Oh, another way to alter clothing. I happen to have access to a free bin outside of a thrift store. And I don't go so much anymore because, number one, I'm not as mobile as I used to be. And number two, hubby has asked me to cut down because I'll grab something with good intentions and sometimes not get around to using it. I love to make stuff and give it away, but lately I haven't done much, so I have to not bring any more in until I've completed what I've set out to do. But over the years, I have taken things and to personalize them. When my mother was still with us and the children in the family were young, I made a t-shirt for her where we used fabric paint, and all the little ones in the family made a palm print on a sweatshirt. And you can do this with t-shirts. And then I took a fabric pen, fabric marker pen, and put the names and dates, names and ages, over the handprints. And that was something my mother treasured for years and years. Something else I did to dress it up just a little bit, I bought a multi-pack of heart-shaped buttons. And my mother's favorite color was red, so this sweatshirt was red. And I took the heart-shaped buttons and put it around the collar and the wrists. So it took a plain, cheap, regular sweatshirt. Now, I bought this one brand new because it was a gift. But that was a way to personalize it. And if you want to do something like this with someone that has fur babies, maybe you put paw prints on them. You may not have to use their own paw prints because I don't know how it would work with the fabric paint. But yeah, if you can make paw prints, that represent their fur babies, that's always nice. I've done the same thing with t-shirts, decorated them that way with fabric pins and things like that. And I used to Ultra t-shirts. A lot of times that I would do things like cut strips in the sleeves downward, but not all the way to the bottom. When I get to the bottom seam or cuff of the t-shirt, it would stop, but I would cut the strips. And of course, this was mostly back in the 70s and 80s when I would do that. Um, a friend of mine used to take and cut the collars and the sleeves off of t-shirts and then reattach them all the way around with safety pins. And that was kind of a cool look. She mostly did this with black t-shirts, but I really liked the look. It's kind of badass. Okay. One of the things that I used to do for my kids when they were small, if the teacher allows, because I always spoke to the teacher first to do this, I would take a regular wire coat hanger. Usually I use the white ones because they're easier to shape. And I would shape it into a circle, take the sandwich baggies that have the flaps, not the Ziploc kind, but the ones that you fold over, and tie them in knots all around the circle of the clothes hanger, and then spray paint it green to make a wreath for their classroom door. And sometimes I would decorate it with little bells or bows and things like that, whatever the kids wanted to put on it. Let me see. Ice cream buckets. Ice cream buckets are one of my favorite things, and I used to have way too many, but I use them for lots of things. If you have little ones and they have Legos or Build-A-Blocks or Lincoln Logs or anything like that, and any of these toys that have the smaller pieces, or even toy cars, Barbies and their clothes, things like that, ice cream buckets are a really good way to store them on shelves or hang them in the closet or whatever. If the items aren't too heavy, hang them on a hook. And every bucket will have, a color coding or something like that, to where the child knows what goes in each bucket, and you can put a piece of masking tape or duct tape or marker, whatever, to mark it. But it's a really good way to store these little toys and, stack them up, and they know where everything is. Especially, like I said, especially if you have something with a lot of little pieces, these are great little ways to keep up with those. Now, I use them in my kitchen. I mostly put a bag of sugar into an ice cream bucket, because I use a lot of sugar. Sometimes I use it for flour. Some people use them for beans. Pretty much anything. Um, I used to also keep like plasticware, things like that, in these ice cream buckets. But regardless of what you want to put in it, they make really good storage. But I also, when my dogs like to spend a lot of time outside, I would sometimes feed them with these ice cream buckets. One of my dogs at the time, named Loki, would also take his bucket and run around the yard with it, toss it, and then go get it, and run around with it and toss it and go get it again. So, silly boy, but they can be fun to play with. Going to the beach. It's something else that you can do. Is an ice cream bucket is good for keeping certain things um, together, to keep the sand off of them. Um, just like I said, use your imagination. There's lots of uses. Another thing to repurpose, especially for ladies. Now, this will work with socks if you're a gentleman, but it seems easier for the ladies if you have old knee highs that have runs in them, or if you take if you use my other idea to cut pantyhose or tights or anything across crossways to make hair ties with, you can take the foot, if you leave enough length on it, take the foot and you put you know, all those little pieces of soap that get so small, they're, you know, they're hard to handle or whatever. Store them in there, and then when you get a few pieces, tie the top in a knot, and your child can use that as like a to lather up with. You can keep using those little slivers and little pieces of soap. You know, kids like to play with those. Let me see. I also, when I go to wash my hair ties and little things like that, sometimes I will put them in a knee-high with or good, better, and different, and tie a knot in it and throw it in the washing machine with everything else to because, you know, over time they get dingy, they get grit, you know, oily or whatever. So I'll take my hair ties and bundle them into a knee high or a sock or something like that, throw them in the wash. Just don't forget to tie a knot in them. That way they don't get lost in the drains and everything. One of the things I've done in the past and probably will continue to do is take special event shirts. You know, when your kids are small, they take part in a lot of events like field day and other things, or like I said, school projects, and where they decorate T-shirts and things like that. And in my case, I had a T-shirt that we did at a festival that had my daughter's name on it when she was a toddler and everything. And when she outgrew it, she did not want to get rid of it. And what I ended up doing was I sewed the bottom closed, I sewed the sleeves closed, then I stuffed it with cotton stuffing or nylon stuffing, what you use to make pillows. And then once I got it stuffed out, I sewed closed the neck of the t-shirt, and she has a pillow, a keepsake pillow. Now, some people will take special, like sporting t-shirts and things like that, and either pin them on the wall or frame them. But if you don't want to go to the expense of getting them framed, and you know your kid is still really proud of these accomplishments and everything, a pillow is a good way to take a special shirt and to repurpose it, and so they're able to use it. Another one of my tricks is whenever I make a pillow, I put fabric softener sheets inside. So it initially it gives them a good scent, and later on when I wash it, usually I would take them to I would take to the laundromat and put them in the tumble washer. But when I wash it, then it, you know, it refreshes them and everything. Um, Something else I was going to say about the t-shirts. But anyway, yeah, that's something I like to do to to keep that special item, but not um, have to throw it away just because they've outgrown it. Okay. Another thing that I've done is I would take old sweaters, especially if I go to a thrift store and there's a discount bin and they have those old, ugly, or outdated, like ugly Christmas sweaters and things like that. I'm going to do a more detailed video on this, but this is something I did this year. Is I took a few old sweaters and sweatshirts and things, and I made little doggy cover-ups and jackets with the sleeves, and I've done some with the legs of sweatpants and things like that. But if you know how to do that, it's not hard. You can do it by hand. And that's something else you can do to repurpose clothing. Now, something else I've done in the past, a lot of people don't use clotheslines anymore. But I do. I have an umbrella clothesline, which really comes in handy because I don't like dryers. But I would take, if I cut off the bottoms of pants to make shorts or something, then I would take that piece and I would sew up one end, and then I'd take the other end, usually if it's got a bit of a hem in it, where I can cut cut the seam a little bit, and I would unwind a wire coat hanger, run it through that the closed hem, and then when it came out the other end, retwist it again and shape it. And that makes a really good clothespin holder, or you can use it for other things. It's also good to use in the bathroom for bath toys and things like that. Um, a friend of mine a long time ago would take these inexpensive plastic and fabric shoe hangers or shoe organizers that hang on a hook, and she took, because she was at the time she was dealing and selling a certain brand of cosmetics, and she owned a lot of those cosmetics, so she would use these types of shoe organizers and things like that, and she would use it to organize her makeup and her makeup brushes and other related items, and put little tabs on them with dates so she knows how long she's had those particular items, because there's a lot of makeup that you shouldn't use after a year, and this is one of the ways she kept up with that. And sorry when I was looking away before, my son came in to let me know he was home. Toothpaste. Toothpaste is wonderful if you have little girls who like little white shoes. It helps, or even if mommy has white shoes. Toothpaste is good for getting the scuff marks and scratches off of them and bring the shine back. It's an abrasive, so it's good for cleaning a lot of things. Do not use it on motorcycle face shields, though, because it's too abrasive for that. I learned that by experience. And old toothbrushes. I keep one in my kitchen for, especially for storage containers that have those tiny lips and curves and things like that around the seals, and those are good to catch any old food that gets stuck in there, or if it's gets dusty or dirty, then that's a good way to clean those little tight spots that you can't get to. Sometimes I've used those in the past for cleaning baby bottles and things like that as well. But so an old toothbrush is a good thing to keep in your kitchen. It's good to keep in your bathroom because they make good nail brushes. I keep one in my bedroom because, as you can see behind me, I have a window unit air conditioner. And when I take out the filter, sometimes I use the brush to clean all the dust and gunk, if there is any, off of the filter, and also to clean the slats of the AC. There's probably other things I use them for that's not coming to mind, but those are just a few things. Suede. Now, I love leather, especially black leather, but I'm not great at cleaning it. But I was reading recently about this, and I decided to use it. I have quite a few pairs of shoes, a couple of purses, and some other items that are suede, and they start looking flat or dingy or dirty. Then that's another use you can use for old toothbrushes. That's what made me think of it. Get a little spray bottle of vinegar, straight vinegar. I don't put water in it, and lightly spray the item, and then use the toothbrush to gently brush up the pile on the suede, or scrub a little spot, but don't scrub too hard if you can avoid it. But that brings the suede back to life. It lifts out all the dust and stuff. I also tend to use an old piece of t-shirt to wipe it after using the toothbrush to help get a whatever grime, especially with my shoes and things, to get the grime out of it, or if it's a stain, something like that. Occasionally, I'll use a little bit of baking soda on a stain, but I test it first on a very, very small spot to make sure it's not going to affect the pile, because different suede is treated different ways. Now that it's summer, if you're like me and you live in an older home, in my case, it's a mobile home, sometimes you get those little drafts and things like that. In the summertime, I will take, if you can find them, and they're available in most places, but sometimes you have to ask for them because they may not have them in an obvious place. Industrial strength garbage bags. Um, they have a thicker ply and they're usually larger. But I will take one of these garbage bags and cover a window with it in the summertime to block out the sun and some of the heat. When I'm not using my air conditioner, when the weather is cooler, then I sometimes will staple, because I love my staple gun, staple or pin one of these industrial strength bags on the outer part of my window on the inside of the house, and cover the air conditioner with it as well to prevent drafts. And they're, I think I usually get a box of like 50 or so for around $7. And they're also, these garbage bags are also really good for storing blankets and pillows and things like that when you don't need them. And again, when I'm storing stuff like that for a season, fabric softener sheets will give a nice fresh smell to them. And it also helps keep out moths and insects and things like that. When you have little kids and they love a certain, cartoon or anime or other type of character, and you want to buy them sheets for their beds in that character, ask if there are flat sheets only available, either that coordinate with or match the bed sheets. And because it's very simple to take those sheets, sew an open seam across the top, and make curtains. They're usually the right size from window to floor, and you don't have to do any hemming. It's usually just that one seam at the top, slide the curtain rods through it, and you're done. And usually you'll need 2 flat sheets. Sometimes you can get a full size sheet and split it, but it takes a little more effort, but whichever works best for you. I'm not a full size, I mean a queen size. Okay, let me see. I've covered most of my list. I'm talking about putting fabric softener sheets in pillows and stored items. I also put them in my dresser drawers and linen closet and things like that, in random places, just to help keep things freshened up. And here's a tip for ladies in the summertime, although gentlemen, this will work for you too. I did this when I worked in retail. This is also appropriate if you work in a job that's in an office where you have to deal with customers, things like that. Especially if you go out of the office and come back, like if you take lunch breaks or if you go to deal with a client or anything like that, you come in and out of the office during the hot weather. One of the things I love to keep on hand is a dry shampoo. There are also no rinse shampoo sprays. You can take a few paper towels. You can spray your hair with this. Take a few paper towels, get most of the dampness out of it, let it air dry, and that way, if you've gotten sweaty, that helps keep you from smelling sweaty, and it reduces the oil from your hair, from sweating in your hair and everything. Another thing I do are baby wipes or body wipes. You can usually find body wipes in larger stores where they have adult products like the adult diapers and things like that. You can also find body wipes. Sometimes you can find them in the feminine hygiene products area, and sometimes you can use just regular baby wipes with aloe or something like that. But that helps, if you've gotten sweaty, your makeup is running, or you've gotten it on your clothing or something like that. Sometimes those wipes will help, get those stains out initially. The little travel size deodorants, I don't tend to keep them in my purse because they can melt and liquefy, but I usually keep them in the bathroom wherever I'm working, or if I have my own personal space like a desk or a locker or something, you can keep it there. And also travel toothbrushes. Travel toothbrushes come in handy because if you have to eat lunch or dinner or something while at work, if you eat on your break, that's a good way to maintain the hygiene and make sure there's, nothing left behind on your teeth. Sometimes I've done just as little as, using water. I usually carry also have a little travel size toothpaste, but if I don't have that, I'll use water and just scrub my teeth a little bit to make sure there's no gunk there, in between brushings. Sometimes I do keep that in my purse for just in case. Um, Peppermint spray. I started using this when I started having hot flashes because I am an older woman, but I've also been told by exotic dancers, athletes, and other people that this works for them as well. You use preferably distilled water. Some people put a few drops of alcohol in it to help hold the scent, and a few drops of peppermint oil. Now, some people like lavender and peppermint mix, but whatever works for you. But the peppermint oil will help make you feel cool. For if it doesn't last forever, you may have to reapply it. But don't put too much, don't just pour the oil in there, because too much peppermint oil will cause the opposite effect and make you feel warmer. But a little bit of spritz of peppermint spray here and there, it does make you feel a little cooler and a little bit more refreshed. It's a nice scent. Sometimes people notice it, sometimes people don't, but it's a lot better than smelling and feeling sweaty. Let's see. Ice bottles. This is very important to me. If you have kids or don't, sometimes you get these throwaway plastic bottles in different sizes, whether it's water bottles, juice bottles, things like that. I drink a lot of soda, so I use soda bottles. I save my husband's water bottles. There are many ways to use these. My main way is I keep these bottles in my freezer and I put them in my dog's water dish to keep them cool during the summertime, to keep their water cool and fresh. However, these are also handy if you use a free, like a chest cooler, like a beer cooler or something like that. You can take a couple of water bottles, especially great for going to the beach or other outings. You put some frozen water bottles in there with either ice or ice packs. Over time, they will melt, but then you have cool water. This is also good if you're taking dogs along. I sometimes will use 2-liter bottles. Mostly it's the 16-ounce or 20-ounce bottles that I use, and sometimes a little bit smaller for these purposes. But I also will sometimes freeze 2-liter bottles and keep them in my freezer, because we do live in a state that is prone to have hurricanes during certain seasons. And that way, if you lose power, you can take these freezer bottles. If I used to keep it in an upright freezer, and when we lose power, I'd put them in my refrigerator. But they help. And if you keep your refrigerator closed and have these bottles in there, it helps keep your food cool. And if you have to put it into a cooler and put some of these ice bottles, it helps perishables last a little bit longer. But when it comes to things like that, play it safe. If you're not sure how long something's been in a cooler or a refrigerator with no electricity, and the ice is the ice bottles have melted and the water is no longer cool, then I would probably not eat whatever it is that's in there, if it's something like lunch meats or milk products and things like that. Well, it looks like I'm going on almost an hour. I think this is one of my longest videos yet, but I just wanted to share some of these tips and tricks because I'd spoken to somebody in person a little while ago and told a few of these things, and she asked me to please, she liked my last video, but she asked me to please extend upon it. expand upon it. Sorry, having one of those days. So, again, if you like my tips and tricks, if you want to know more, or if you can improve upon some of these things, please let me know. If you like the videos I make, please look down there, find the like button, hit that little sucker. If you're new to this channel and you like what I have to say, hit the subscribe and notification buttons. If you can, consider pledging to my Patreon. I have tiers that go from $1 up to $50 a month, depending on how you want to do it. Or you can do your own. You can decide. There's a button so that you can decide how much and how often you want to pay, if you want to pay. So I think I'm going to leave it here for now. Like I said, let me know what you think. Please, I love comments. Even if it's just constructive criticism, I love comments. So let me know what you think. The only way I know how to improve upon things is if you let me know what you want to see or don't want to see. All right, so I'm going to leave it here. I hope everyone's having a good morning, a good day, a good night, depending on where you are, because some of my friends are across the pond or in other countries. So I wish you all well. I hope you're staying cool, and I will see you soon. Bye for now.